Hello and welcome to a new episode of Josh's Car Corner and the newest episode of Project Crewman. It has been about 2 months since the last episode that I dropped, and as you saw in that last episode, the Crewman is up and running and driving around. Difference being between then and now is that the Crewman is now legally running and driving around. It is fully insured, it is registered, and it has plates. Since I've had this thing on the road, there's two questions I get all the time. Number one, how did you get it here? And I don't have anything other to say than the lame answer of, I didn't get it here, somebody else did, I just put it together. But the other one is, how did you register it? Because it is only 20 years old, and the 25-year import rule we have would make you think that it is not possible to get one of these registered. But as I've seen so many times at Outback in the Midwest, with all the modern utes and wagons that are coming in, there are ways. So the short answer is, it depends. And for the most part, it depends on where you live. So I can really only speak to my experience of getting this thing registered in the state of Wisconsin, but I'm going to take you through what I had to do to get this thing registered for use on the road here. So the first thing that made the registration process more difficult for me is that I didn't have a trail of paperwork showing previous ownership. The thing I found out about this whole process is, even if you're getting registration from Australia and the previous owner there, having that is crucial in getting this process expedited. I didn't have that because this thing was written off as a statutory write-off vehicle because it was a flood car. So it had been changed hands with insurance companies and then auctioneers and whatever. So I had no trail of paperwork. So that made it more complicated for me in that I had to get what's called a bonded title. They ask you to provide what's called a surety bond. Basically, it's a piece of paper that says, I hereby declare and affirm with a cash-backed payment that this vehicle is mine. Say you find a car on the side of the road and it appears abandoned and you say, okay, well, I'm gonna get it titled in my name and I'm gonna fix it and I'm gonna drive around. Yeah, you can do that. If they can't find previous ownership or no one claims the vehicle, you could do that. But if, say, a year or two later, someone comes along and says, actually, no, that's my car and I can prove it, and they have the original paperwork and the original title, they can take that vehicle back from you. But the state is also on the hook for then issuing a title to you for the vehicle when it was clearly proven to be owned by somebody else. So the surety bond covers their losses against that situation happening. Now I have this and the GTO both insured with Hagerty Insurance. Hagerty is great because they also were able to provide me with the surety bond. I just had to give them information like the VIN and any applicable information for it, and then they reached out to a third-party insurer, and I think in this case it was Travelers Insurance. They provide the surety bond. But before I can get the surety bond, the state of Wisconsin had to assess a value for the vehicle. So I showed them what I paid for the rolling shell. They then did some sort of calculation in some back room and figured out what they think the vehicle is worth. Then they give me that value that they think the vehicle is, and then you have to get a surety bond that is 50% more than their assessment of what the vehicle is worth. So in this case, it ended up being $5,700. That wasn't that bad. That only cost me $100 for the surety bond, and the surety bond gives me a 5-year coverage of anybody pursuing me or the state saying, no, this is my vehicle. Send all that paperwork in, they figure out the value, I get the paperwork back, apply for the surety bond, send that back in with an additional payment, and then a request for license plates too, and then that had to get processed. And then when they sent that back, what they came back and told me was, I couldn't get normal plates on this thing. So as you can see, the Crewman was given a collector's plate. Now, in the state of Wisconsin, a collector's plate can be applied to any vehicle that is 20 years and 1 day old. Now, because this thing was a 2005, I just happened to slide in under there because what I ultimately wanted was just to get normal plates on here, and I wanted to get a personalized plate that said 4-door Ute. I thought that would be slick. Their computer system does not like the Holden VIN and wouldn't let them input it into their system, so they weren't going to let me have normal plates. So this is the second best scenario for me to get this thing registered. Now the nice thing is that a collector's plate is a one-time registration fee in the state of Wisconsin of $220. So I paid for this plate. I never have to renew it ever again. It's on here for life, one-time payment. So that's good. That means I can't get a personal plate. You can't get personal collector's plates, which is unfortunate. You just get the number for whatever collector you are. And here's the funny thing, if I ever get another vehicle in the future, that needs collector's plates, they'll just give me one with this same number, except it'll have an A on it. And then after that, if I get another one, it'll be a B, and so on and so forth. This number is my number for life, and I can transfer it to any vehicle that's more than 20 years old. So in Wisconsin, I got lucky to fall into this system, because if this chassis had been a 2006 or a 2007, I might have had to wait a year or two to get plates on this thing in the state of Wisconsin. But does that mean I wouldn't have been able to drive it at all if I couldn't have gotten plates from Wisconsin? Well, no. And that is the other part that we need to talk about. So just because you live in a state, does that mean you have to get plates on your car from that state? Well, the state you're living in would say yes. But for the purposes of getting a vehicle registered, technically no. And the reason I say that is because when I was living in Phoenix, anytime I would go to a Cars and Coffee, all the Lamborghinis and the McLarens and the Ferraris, they were all registered on Montana plates. Now, why were they registered on Montana plates? Because the state of Arizona assigns your annual registration fee based on the value of the car. And when you have a $300,000 supercar, that annual fee to register your vehicle is ludicrous. Montana, on the other hand, has a one-time fee that you pay to register any vehicle, and they don't even care if you have the vehicle in that state. Now, some states, like Wisconsin, will ask you where the vehicle is stored, and you usually list your home address or wherever you're keeping the car. Some states don't do that. This is why I was talking about before with it depends on where you live. Some states do not care. They just want the money. Montana is one of those. You can register just about anything in the state of Montana. Tennessee is another one. It seems to be where a lot of these Holdens that get imported into the US initially get registered. And the guy down there who's doing it, Kelly Metzmaker, has got some system worked out with the state where he doesn't even have to worry about converting them to left-hand drive or making them meet US emissions. They just let him register them. And the thing is, once you get a vehicle registered in one state, it makes it a lot easier to transfer registration to another state because it's already been on the books in one state. So does that mean that someday I could go register this thing in another state and get normal plates on it? Possibly yes. It all depends. Go on VinWiki and watch Travis Bell's explanation of how he got his black Ute registered, because he started with a right-hand drive Ute shell, got a donor G8, got some guy to take all the parts and convert it and make it left-hand drive. And in the state of Indiana, because they have so many RVs there, they have this form called a body transfer affidavit you can fill out where you can say, well, it was this car, but then I put this body on it, and now it is this car, and it'll allow you to transfer it over. So in his state, it's absolutely legal to do that, and he did. Now, federally speaking is a whole different situation. I don't even know all the ins and outs of it. All I know is that the 25-year rule federally would say none of these cars are allowed to be here. However, there are ways to make it more palatable federally. Like if you talk to Randy Reese at Left Hand Utes, in order to federalize the vehicles, they have to meet all US crash standards and emission standards, which means they have to be outfitted with US fuel systems and emission systems and US crash mechanical pieces. So like the crash bumpers, the airbags, the seat belts, anything that was crash tested here in the US, if you get that from like a GTO or a G8 or an SS, you're not making it 100% legal, because in order to make it 100% legal, Holden would have had to import 10 of these and allow the Highway Traffic Safety Administration to crash test 10 of them and make sure that they meet crash standards. Well, that was never going to happen, never is going to happen. So as far as I've heard, the federal government has not come after anybody yet for importing one of these and their state allowing them a title. I think it's all going back to the whole states' rights things. It's like, if a state says it's okay, it's okay. That's why the federal government hasn't cracked down on all the states that have legalized marijuana. If a state says it's good enough, the federal government's not going to step in and say, well, actually, no, you can't do that. It's gotten a lot easier than it was 10 years ago. See, 10 years ago, the only way you could really do it is have Randy Reese convert it, and then he would get a special VIN assignment from the state of Colorado. And then again, once it's registered there, you can register it anywhere. More states are more accepting and will allow you just to register these things without having to change a damn thing. It comes off of the cargo container into Indianapolis, and off you go. The thing I would say is, don't be afraid to inquire with your state what is legal and what is not. Part of me was kind of paranoid that when I went to go to register this thing, not only would they say, no, we're not going to give you a title, they would say, no, it shouldn't be here at all, and we're going to take it off you. Well, legally, they can't actually do that, but honestly, they don't really care except to collect fees. They just want the money, and sometimes they'll dive into the legalese and make it more difficult than it needs to be. And honestly, the state of Wisconsin is shooting themselves in the foot, because if you get a personalized plate, that's a $110 registration fee every year, year after year after year. But instead, they made me get a collector plate that I only have to pay $220 on once. So they could be getting a lot more money out of me, and I would have been happy to provide that money to them, but they said, nope, you have to get the collector plate. Well, fine, I'll keep my money. That's cool. So I'm gonna keep working on this thing over the winter. I've been meddling with the transmission tuning and having a lot of fun with it. I'm really getting it dialed in and getting it to drive the way I want to, and God, I love driving this thing. It is so much fun. Still gonna do the interior all winter, and you will see episodes when there are updates to the interior and getting things done in there. There's a lot to do. And I know now that the front springs are completely wrong. GTO springs are too soft. They will not get this thing at the right height. I have to get some other springs out of Australia to get the front of this thing sitting correctly. But that's all gonna happen, and you will see that in the coming weeks and months as the winter passes over and spring shows up once again, and I can drive this thing on the road once again. So thank you for watching this episode of Josh's Car Corner and Project Crewman, and I will see you soon.